know as well as train probably more people than anybody else in the world possibly on preventing and attacking networks. So please join me and welcome Mr. Ed Skoudis.
Thank you, Mr. Baggett. I appreciate it, sir. It's wonderful to see you all here. I'd like to thank BSides Augusta for this opportunity, thank General Fogarty for the wonderful words of opening here, and thank you all for attending. I'd like to talk with you today about some of the stuff that my team has been working on, and I actually want to issue a challenge to you. And I'm going to come back to BSides Augusta next year and see how you're doing on the challenge. The talk is embodied in this thing called Kineticpwnage. The times, they've changed, right? We live in a world where most of our physical infrastructure is controlled by network computer systems. So what does that mean? That's what we're going to discuss. Here's a little intro for me. Mark Baggett already said some very kind words. I run a little company called CounterHack. And CounterHack builds things like NetWars and CyberCity. Cyber Ranges is what we build. We also do a lot of offensive stuff in penetration testing. And well, I see here that this certificate is only valid for today, so we should get moving forward here. All right. So I'm going to give you a bit of historical grounding. Where have we come from in the last 70 years or so? I'll give you my central thesis for the talk. We'll talk about why this is so, some implications, some of the projects we're working on, and then a manifesto and a call to action. How do you like that? If you go back to, say, 1946 or so, the hacking movement started. Now, this actually bothered me when I first started researching this and reading this, because I grew up in the Bell system. I worked at a company called Bellcore that helped to make the regional Bell operating companies interoperate, and I always thought it was the phone phreakers. Those are the people that created hacking, right? Well, in his book, Hackers, Stephen Levy talks about this origin of the hacker community and says if you look at it, it actually kind of predates the phone network, and it goes back to the Tech Model Railroad Club at MIT. And there, some hackers got together and built very elaborate model railroads, trains that were computer controlled, and they kept updating it in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, putting all kinds of industrial control equipment. It was awesome. They had this building here, and you could play Tetris on the side of the building. Right? Now, since then, the Chaos Computer Club has actually implemented that full size over in Germany, but this is the source of a lot of this sort of hacker idea and hacker mindset, manipulating technology to do amazing and great things in ways that it wasn't originally designed to do it. So my central thesis here, we're entering the golden age of hacking not just software, but hacking software to have impact on hardware and physical circumstances. I saw a quote, it's a couple of years ago, by Joe Grand. You guys know Joe Grand, right? Kingpin, back in the day with the Loft hacking group. Joe Grand has done amazing things since then. I saw him do a presentation a couple of years ago, and he said this. He said, hardware is the new software. I'm like, dude, that's fantastic. You know how like in fashion they say, like green is the new black or something? You're like, what do I know about fashion? Yeah, exactly. I don't know anything about fashion. But hardware is the new software. Or dual core, right? Dual core, hacking wrapper, just fantastic stuff. Hack All the Things is one of my favorite songs of his. Hack all the things, not just the software. We've been doing a lot with hacking software over the last couple of decades. But now, increasingly, it's time to hack the hardware. Embedded systems, the Internet of Things, jailbreaking your devices, rooting them, the hobbyist culture, the maker movement, they all smash together in a really exciting time. This is awesome. It's also horrifying and scary. I mean, we all laugh. Remember when they hacked into the street signs and said, caution, zombies ahead. Oh, that's funny. That's cute. And it could actually kill people and hurt people if they did it to the wrong signs at the wrong time with the wrong messages. Yeah. So this is really cool times, but it's also scary times. And are we, as an information security community, up to the challenge here? Honestly, I'm not so sure we are. So some recent headlines along this. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know on this slide. You've seen it. This is just context, right? April 2015, did you see the GAO report on hacking airplanes? Now, this was a highly controversial report. Some people said that certain conclusions in it were unrealistic, although it does raise the concern of somebody hacking from the ground into an aircraft in the sky and taking action on it. April 2015, there was a BBC article about hacking train rail signals so you could divert trains or maybe derail trains. May of 2015, we had some headlines again involving airlines with Chris Roberts allegedly hacking into airline systems and maybe changing the direction of aircraft, although it's been very controversial as to whether that was actually a simulation that he was hacking or a real system. We'll see how that comes out. Have you noticed how curiously quiet that whole thing has gone lately? I've been looking for more details on it, and that whole thing is very quiet. And then, of course, just last month, the amazing work from Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek has been released publicly. 2 years ago, they did a presentation at DEF CON on hacking cars. And it was neat. They showed that if you had physical access to the car area network, you could take over the car, and you could change the steering wheel, and you could apply the brakes or turn off the brakes or whatever. And everybody at that time said, oh, well, you have to be like sitting in the car. And if you're going to cause the car to crash, there's a significant downside for you if you're sitting in the car. You need physical access to the car area network. So Charlie and Chris spent another year plus figuring out how you could get remote access to this. And famously, they did that and demonstrated it last month, where they could take over a car wirelessly and, well, do arbitrary things to the car, including causing it to crash. This is scary stuff. So Chrysler had to push a patch, and people would have to bring in their car to the dealership, although they can't get the patches out fast enough. So you know what they're doing now? They're shipping a USB thumb drive to owners of these vehicles, saying, plug this USB drive into your vehicle and it will fix it. It occurs to me that this is another attack surface, right? When you get one of these USBs in the mail, you're going to plug it into your car to fix it? Oh yeah, good luck with that. So it goes back to planes, trains, and automobiles, doesn't it? And when I'm reading about, the latest hack, this or that, honestly, maybe I've just grown jaded. But if it doesn't have physical impact, I find it a lot less exciting. Right? Oh, you can make Windows run code. Well, that's nice. Windows loves to, that's good and that's important. Those are interesting and important hacks. But if you can make Windows to run code to cause a car to crash, oh, now I'm interested. You had me at car crashing, right? So if it doesn't have a physical impact, I find it a lot less exciting. All right, so why is this so? Let's go over some of the industry-changing trends here. IP everywhere. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, Internet protocol everywhere. I remember when I was a child. I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. I lived 2 houses down from Steven Slazakowski, and we were tinkerers. We built stuff. And one of the things that we built was a little Morse code sending and receiving devices between our houses. Now, we didn't have a way to actually, get a signal between houses, so we ran a wire between our houses so we could sit in our basement. We only lived 2 houses apart, but we could sit in our basements and send Morse code signals to each other. Okay. What I wanted was a global network where I could send messages to anyone, anytime, for free, anywhere on the planet. We've got that now, right? This is awesome. Could you imagine being 11 now? Oh, yeah. And we've wired everything to this. Baby cams, thermostats, light bulbs, cash registers, grocery stores, power grids, water systems, industrial and military equipment. Wow. Interconnectivity everywhere. Everything online, all the time. Some of it's connected directly to the internet. Shodan, thank you for showing us all of that stuff. So you could just do a simple search in Shodan, the hacker search engine, and find out where all this stuff is. And it's worse than that. Something on an intranet is actually on the internet. We'll get to that in a little bit, but to see how we can get access to stuff that people didn't expect us to be able to get access to. Even if it's on a separate IP network. IP loves routing. That's what it's built for. And it loves to move packets back and forth between these things. IP loves IP. Best friends forever. But you say, air gaps. I talk to a lot of people, and they always say, but we air gap that stuff. Really? Are you sure? Do you think air gaps are the solution here? I'm worried that if you think that, we've air gapped that, so that one's safe, our security there is not as important because it's air gapped. You understand it's air gapped. If your security model depends solely on your being air gapped, you're going to get owned, and you probably deserve to get owned. You should think of air gaps as merely high latency connections. They are connections. Because you see, you come up with this fantastic scheme to have an air gap network. Good for you. But the person who follows you in your job is not as brilliant as you. We can all agree on that, right? And they're going to say, if I just connect this together, it'll be much more efficient. I don't know why that old guy didn't connect these things, because I can connect them and do better. And they're going to connect it, so your air gap will disappear that way. Or somebody's going to take a thumb drive, probably the one that they've recycled after they patched their Chrysler vehicle. They're going to take that, and they're going to move it across, just because they want to copy something or patch something across. The bean counters, they're going to say, if we just connect these networks together, the accounting people, we'll save a bunch of money. Your air gaps will dissipate over time, especially if you're on critical networks. I'm not saying that air gaps don't provide some value. Look, air gap things. But you can't merely have an air gap as your security, right? Okay, next. We've webified everything. Most everything's got a web-based interface on the front of it. We've seen this a lot in the work that we've done in the Cyber City project. HVAC systems, power control systems, smart meters have web-based interfaces on them. All this stuff is web-based, meaning it's ample ground for all these web-based attacks. Cross-site scripting, SQL injection, cross-site request forgery, remote file include, command injection, all that stuff now comes up because we've got web-based interfaces to this stuff. I remember it was actually several years ago, we were doing some hacking, paid hacking, professional penetration testing if you want to call it that, of smart meters, and we were doing this on behalf of some of the utility companies. We found a cross-site scripting flaw on one of the smart meters. So the web application that ran on the smart meter, the thing that would sit outside your house, had a cross-site scripting flaw in it. We reported this to the vendor who made the meter. We were talking with their product manager. And the product manager said, oh, that's dumb. We don't have a web server on our meter. Why would we put a web server on our meter? There can't be a cross-site scripting flaw on the web server on our meter because there's no web server on the meter. I said, well, actually there is. You should really look into this. So he looked into it, called us back 24 hours later. He says, you know what? There is a web server on our meter. Yeah, we kind of saw that, and it's got a cross-site scripting flaw, And he told us, he said, one of their customers had asked for it. So they put it on the meter and pushed it into the firmware, and now all the meters had it. Yeah, this is their product manager. Scary stuff. So we've webified all this. All right, well, here's a plan. What if we have these utility networks? The things that control all of the SCADA systems. And they usually call these things, the operations technology environment, the OT environment. And we'll keep that separate from the IT environment. The IT environment's where the desktops are and people read an email and surfing the internet. We'll separate them. Air gap, well, air gaps are high latency connections, but we'll put some firewalls and stuff in between there and we'll be fine. And in fact, occasionally, there will be testimony where you'll have utility company employees talking with Public Utility Commission regulators. And a question will get asked, is your OT environment is your OT environment connected to the internet? And here's the response that you often hear. No, it isn't directly connected to the internet. What is the most important word of that sentence? Directly, exactly, directly. But outbound access equals inbound connectivity, right? I mean, for those of you who do this a lot, reverse shell, right? It's as simple as a reverse shell. And there are plentiful opportunities for getting access to an OT environment by manipulating the IT environment. And the IT environment's connected to the internet, after all. For example, an industrial control system, maybe controlling a power grid, is sending data to a data historian. The data historian is sending that to a common database so it can be analyzed. That database is replicated from the OT network into the IT network. On the IT network, a workstation accesses it so you can see what's happening, right? The data historian is pulling data so you can see power flows over time and so forth. And we need people on the IT network to look at that. And then, of course, that workstation is also connected to the internet. So there you go. There is a path from the deepest part of OT all the way out to the internet. Or another one. A friend of mine who works for a utility company told me this. He was on a tour of one of their facilities. He's a security guy working for a utility company. On a tour of one of their facilities, and they're looking around at how everything's set up, and there was this workstation sitting there on the OT environment, running an HMI, human-machine interface, controlling stuff. And the guy who was taking him on a tour said, hold on just a second, took out his phone, plugged in a USB cable, and plugged it into the machine running the HMI. My friend said, oh my gosh, what are you doing? He said, dude, I'm just charging my phone. It's okay. Okay, so smartphone to HMI PC to pwnage right there. Right? You got a nice cellular connection directly to that phone, although not in this room. At least if you're on AT&T like me. Right? We are air-gapped. Yes. Or OT systems. Can anything on your OT environment resolve names on the internet? Try to ping www.google.com on a machine on your OT environment if you happen to have a utility company that you're part of. If it resolves names, dude, what happened there? That is bad. You have a channel of command and control across DNS all the way back into your OT environment. Check that out. And then, of course, I won't even bother mentioning Stuxnet and USB, right? They thought they had an air-gapped environment. All right, now sometimes when I talk about this, people say this to me. They say, Ed, wait. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You don't understand. We have physical limitations that we have built into the physical equipment that will stop really bad things from happening. There are pressure valves, so if the pressure goes too high, it'll release the pressure. Or there's governors, that if it starts spinning too fast, the governors will expand, the rotational inertia will kick in, and it will slow things down. It's okay. And then we've got humans in the loop. If things start getting out of whack, the humans will see this and gracefully control things and shut things down. I've heard this from people. These different arguments say this is not that big of a deal. But here's the concerns. 4 responses to that. First of all, your pressure valve's going to trigger and release the extra pressure. What is the gas that is behind that pressure? That itself could be problematic. You're just going to release gas? Good luck with that. Or the physical controls themselves are increasingly being replaced with computer controls. We have a governor on this thing, and it's actually just a computer system checking on how fast it's spinning and then slows it down if it's spinning too fast. I like the old-fashioned physical stuff myself. Or for low-cost operations of remote equipment, it's increasingly being controlled across an IP network. Having individual technicians deployed all over the place controlling the individual technology, that's hard to do. And it's very expensive. This is especially a big deal in the petroleum industry, where they have long pipelines, right? Long pipelines going through often very uninhabited places, and getting people there to control all of the equipment, that's hard. So instead, put computers there to monitor things. You still have humans that are interacting with those computers using an HMI across the network. Now giving us an opportunity to manipulate those humans. The humans are actually part of the manipulatable loop, right? Their cognitive psychology, what are the people seeing and what are they making sense of there? So by manipulating the HMIs, humans might take the wrong action. So, another question that sometimes people will ask me, what are your major areas of concern? What keeps you awake at night, Ed? You know, hacking cars, that's a concern. Hacking airplanes, that's a concern. But these are my 3 big ones. The power grid. It's the mother of all infrastructures. It has gotten better over the last 4 or 5 years. It really has, measurably better. And it is still woefully inadequate. Really. This is a big, hard, expensive problem to secure the power grid. Yeah. Healthcare environments. This one, in my experience, has not gotten better the last few years. It's a mess. It's a disaster. And I'm talking hospital systems themselves, the equipments that are scanning patients and such, but also the medical devices themselves. This one is a big worry. I mean, talk about human impact, right? And then thirdly, weapon systems. Another big concern, if somebody could hack into a weapon system and disable it, so the people who rely on it to defend our nation can't use it to defend themselves and our nation. That's bad, just rendering it inert. Or worse yet, turning it on its owner or operator. Really scary stuff. In fact, there was a report that came out March 2015 about how our weapons supply and weapon systems themselves are constantly under attack, and it was reported in various news sources, and that there are vulnerabilities there. Also, there's stuff outside of this, right? These are the big 3 for me, but chemical production, manufacturing, the German steel mill incident that was reported on December of last year. And then we get into this whole hacking of the Internet of Things. It's almost like we're really trying to make the world completely hackable. Really, it's like we're going out of our way here. The company called Pony Express, they do some pretty cool stuff for monitoring and pen testing and so forth. They released a paper. It's really a good paper. You should read it. It's at internetofelvilthings.com. And the paper is an analysis of the Internet of Things used for evil. They call it the Internet of Evil Things. And they talk in here about self-procured IT and bring your own device, bring your own whatever it is, right? It's hard enough for us to secure our enterprise, government, and military networks with the stuff that we know that's on there. But if somebody brings in additional devices, a webcam or a USB thumb drive or anything else, how do you secure that? How do you even know it's there? Also, lots of small, cheap devices with many vulnerabilities. One of the things that we did at SANS Orlando, you guys were there. At SANS Orlando back in April of this year, Josh Wright and Tim Medine, these are 2 guys that work for me, they spent a few $100s on various Internet of Things devices. They bought some wireless routers, they bought a couple of door locks, they bought a couple of webcams, and they brought them in, And we invited students, and we had 50 students show up, and they just did an evening of hacking. It was unstructured. They won over a couple different tools to hack these things and said, we just want to see what you could find. And they did this for 2 hours. They found 4 0 days. Most of them local file include and remote file include. Okay, LFI and RFI. 4 of them found in 2 hours with just 50 hackers sitting in a room just hacking this crap. You wonder what the vendors are doing, right? Why didn't the vendors find? This is not hard to find. Things like XSS, cross-site scripting, command injection, local file include, remote file include. And then the commoditization of malicious hardware. Things like the Wi-Fi Pineapple, the USB rubber ducky. This stuff is getting dirt cheap so that as an attacker, you don't have to spend a lot of money to proliferate this stuff in the parking lot of your target environment so that some of it might get carried in. Oh, and the air gap goes away, right? All right. And then the Internet of Toys. Just talked about the Internet of Things, the Internet of Toys. We had the most delightful project that my team worked on. We finished the project up about 6 months ago. The idea was, there are various toy companies that are introducing new toys. They're very exciting. They'll be on the shelves at Christmas time this year. With Wi-Fi, Bluetooth low energy, infrared, custom wireless. The toys talk, they giggle, they interact with you. They download firmware updates across the internet. They have adventures, so the toys, a child can like shoot at the toys and the toys explode and the toys shoot back. And if you have a child that's particularly lethargic, you can just set up the toys and the toys will kind of shoot at each other and stuff, right? They're all integrated with mobile devices, so the lethargic kid sitting on the couch can just, on his mobile phone, kind of control all the toys. Web-based interfaces to all this stuff. Cloud-based services, so you could download new adventures. If I had this when I was 11, I'd probably gone nowhere in my life because I spent all my time just playing with that stuff. All of these things together, this was our project. Customer came to me and said, Ed, if I gave you this project, I probably wouldn't have to pay you because you'd want to do it anyway. And I'm thinking to myself, he's right, I know he's right. Anyway, he ended up paying us too, still. So that was nice. All very fun hacking, but significant security concerns. I should point out that the Barbie, that Mattel, that's not our customer, right? I put that up there because I wanted to put stuff that wasn't our customer as an example here. Also, Google's been working with ViewMaster to create a virtual reality ViewMaster. How cool is that? And then they've got the talking Barbies, and then there's a whole bunch of other things. And we got the opportunity to hack them. We found all kinds of cool stuff. Now, what are the attack vectors that companies like this are concerned about? They're concerned about somebody corrupting children, because the things talk to kids. And if somebody could inject in across the internet little voices and stuff, and you could like swear at the children or poison their minds. So that's an attack surface that we're concerned about. Another attack surface is tracking children. If the child takes his or her doll around, could somebody track them and find out where the child is? It's another concern. But we came up with another one. We found that a lot of these devices don't have simple replay prevention. We reported this to our customer, and they're like, we don't care. So if you make the toy say, hello, somebody could sniff that message. It's encrypted, but they could just play it again. Hello, 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 hello. Who cares? Who cares? So we came up with this idea. What if somebody were to find, in the protocol exchange that is encrypted, a specific message sent at a specific time that causes a lot of CPU on the target machine? And then they were to take that message, encrypted, but they know because of the time that it went on the protocol that they can burn CPU with it, and they just play that again and again and again and again and again and again and again with the goal of heating up the toy to the point that it scalds a child or catches on fire. So I mentioned, the customer originally said, we don't care about replay attacks. We don't need that defense. And then we said, okay, well, what about this? That seems like a bad thing. Scalding children, that's bad. Setting fires, bad. So they added replay defense. So that's nice. So kind of pulling all these ideas together, we've been working on a project at CounterHack on behalf of SANS called Cyber City. I think some of you have actually participated in some Cyber City missions. Others of you may have heard about it. For those of you that haven't, Cyber City's idea was to take a lot of these kinetic impacts from hacking computer systems and to model them in an environment with real industrial control equipment so that we could train people on it, so that we could see what the impacts are. So it's not only an education piece, it's also got a research piece to it. And we've had folks from all walks of life participate in it. Here is a shot of Cyber City. It's 6 feet by 8 feet. The city on top of the table is made up of, well, little buildings that are often associated with train sets. It's what's under the table that gets interesting here. Here's the top of the table, and you'll see we divided it into 4 quadrants. Lower left quadrant is our military quadrant, right? We've got a rocket launcher there. We've got a landing strip. Lower right-hand quadrant here, here's where we have our residential folks. We got City Hall. We've got a firehouse. There's some houses there. Upper right-hand quadrant is commercial, hospital, bank. We've got an ISP and so forth up there. And top left quadrant, a lot of action there. That's our industrial quadrant. It's got a chemical factory. It's got a power station. It's got a water reservoir and water tower. All of this internetworked. Under the table, we have a complex network designed to represent a city. So everything you've just seen has public-facing internet, but it's the Internet of Cyber City offered by its ISP, as well as intranets for all that stuff. And we've built, currently we're at 19 different missions. So the central organizing concept of Cyber City is to give somebody a mission. Most of our missions involve terrorists trying to do horrible things, and the participants have to stop the terrorists from doing bad stuff. So for example, in the power grid, bad guys have hacked in and they've caused a blackout. Your job is to retake control of the power grid assets and turn the lights back on, right? Or transportation, bad guys have hacked in and they've caused all the traffic lights to turn green at the same time. Your job is to stop that, because that's bad, right? Yeah. A water reservoir, this one's a fascinating one. In this one, the bad guys have not contaminated the water. Instead, they've hacked into the data stream that goes to the HMI that reports on the quality of water. And they've manipulated that so that the water looks contaminated. Now, if you're a human sitting there looking at the HMI, and the HMI is telling you the water's contaminated, what do? You fix it. You decontaminate it by dumping chemicals into the water. But the water's not contaminated. In fact, the dumping of the chemicals that you're going to put in the water will contaminate it. And what we're trying to model here is, if you can't trust the data integrity or the HMI, well, what can you trust? Are you going to send people out there every time you got an anomalous reading to actually check? Maybe that's what you do. But this is a big concern, manipulating humans through their HMIs. Train system on this one. The train's got a weapon on it. It's a dirty bomb. And your job is to take control of the train and make sure it doesn't get directed into the residential quadrant, because the terrorists have threatened to detonate it there. So we got hacking trains. Weapon system. Here, the bad guys take control of a missile launcher and have aimed it at the hospital. Your job initially is to re-aim the weapon system. But then in the middle of the mission, we got a frag order that gets published automatically. It's all in the system. And it says, actually, we want you to not only re-aim it, but fire it harmlessly off into the horizon. Because the concern is if you merely re-aim it, the bad guys may take control of it again, re-aim it, and shoot it. All right, so you want to discharge its weapons. And here's some pictures of Cyber City. Here's the commercial quadrant. Here's our military quadrant. You can see our rocket launcher. You're like, dude, that's like a Nerf rocket launcher. It is, yes. But we put an interface on it that looks like a weapon system. We couldn't put an actual weapon system in here. Well, first of all, because it could blow stuff up. But secondly, it would be classified so quickly, right? All right, here is our industrial quadrant. I love this view because you can see the train going by. You can see our substation. I've become something of a connoisseur of substations. When I drive around, you see those little electrical substations, and I look at them, that one's dirty. That one's really nice. Oh, look how they laid that out. It's kind of a weird thing, and I point this out to my wife as we're driving around town. Look at that substation. That one's even nicer than ours. All right? Okay. Here's our residential quadrant. Here's our power grid. We got our power grid inside this device. It's under the table. We've got a mixture of Phoenix Contact systems. That's on the top row and the second row. Phoenix Contact is often used for water processing. You see it a lot in water plants. And then down here we have some Allen Bradley devices, used a lot for power grid and other things. And we also have some Siemens devices in there as well. So we tried to represent a lot of different market share in the Cyber City project. And one of the most exciting things that I've been able to participate in the last year was the Cyber City project at Cyber Shield 2015. Are you guys familiar with Cyber Shield? What a neat thing. They invite many hundreds of National Guard soldiers, and they have them learn. In fact, they had classes on Security Onion. They had classes on Bro. Pretty cool. They had classes on industrial control systems. Fantastic stuff. And they also did Cyber City missions. And we had 240 National Guard soldiers participate in this. They were in teams of 10, representing 24 different states. And we threw them through 4 Cyber City missions. And it was so exciting to watch them battle against terrorists inside the system. Some of these teams were awesome. Really impressive. And some weren't. But we took the best teams. We took the 4 best teams and had a Saturday capstone event where they got to face off against each other. It was really fun. Yes? Pardon me? Is it safe to assume the pictures are of the awesome teams? Why do you ask that, sir? You look very familiar. Let's see here. Very nice. Nicely done, sir. Nicely done. Now, sometimes people see the CyberCity stuff, and they're like, why did you build it? I mean, why does it make an actual little city? Why don't you just simulate everything? You can simulate everything. Our concerns were, one, costs. If we were to make this thing just a giant video game, the video game production budgets today are $100 million plus, and man, do they look great. But we didn't have that kind of budget to build this thing. We thought we could get some pretty good-looking imagery by actually having physicality to it and putting it on camera. So you can see there's 5 streaming video cameras inside of CyberCity. You could actually see it. So that was one reason, sort of budgetary and realism concerns, to build one. The second reason was, if we had built this entirely as a sim, you know that certain people in the military would look at that and say, that's just a big video game. Why do I care? Now, they're actually doing some really innovative things in training people with video games in the military, but still, we were concerned that some folks, nobody here, I'm sure, would say, that's just not real. Instead, we'd say, it is real. There's actual physical device behind it. Yes, your soldier just derailed a train. Admittedly, the train is only 6 inches long. But it's a physical train, and it just got derailed, right? Or we're using the same exact equipment, the industrial control equipment, that is used in real power grids and real water systems. We've learned a lot of lessons in the CyberCity deployment. The biggest lessons we've learned is everything is far weaker than you'd expect. Seriously, we put stuff in there, and it falls over just by itself. Or, once you get it kind of running, if somebody just sends some strange packets to it, the whole thing just crashes. It is crazy how feeble this stuff is. And when you talk to the vendors, you say, all we had to do was send, a stream of SYN packets to your device, and it just went offline. Well, don't connect it to the internet. The air gap argument comes back again. That's what the vendor told. Don't connect it to the internet. Air gaps don't happen. Hospital systems, industrial control systems, they're very brittle. And it's time for them to stop being that way. So where are we headed with all of this? What's next? We are working very hard. In fact, I've got one guy on my team who's assigned full-time to this, and I've got other guys on my team that are working on it. And that is to take what we've learned in the CyberCity project and to go full size. There is an amazing facility in Indiana called Muscatatuck, the Muscatatuck Urban Training Center. And it's actually a town that was created in the late 1920s, and it was abandoned in about 2006, and the military bought it, and they use it for training now. It's used for training of military personnel. Some of you guys may have been there training on things. Yeah, very cool. Isn't it an amazing place? Awesome. It is used by law enforcement. It's used by some of our allies. I went and visited it last October, and the day that I was there, there was some Navy SEALs training there, which was awesome to see, and there were also some Kuwaitis training there on a dinner banquet that they're planning on hosting, and they wanted to see what would happen if it came under terrorist attack. It's really fascinating stuff, but it currently doesn't have any cyber missions. So we're working on building cyber missions to overlay on top of this. Very excited about it. Mission design is underway. We've been working on it for about 5 months right now, and I put a question mark after this because it's not 100% sure, but it looks like we're going to debut this April of 2016 at CyberShield. And what we'll likely do is take the 2 best teams and have them do full-day missions in this. Really, really looking forward to it. Yeah. Cool. Now, another thing that people throw up at this. They say, okay, Ed, let's say it is as weak and vulnerable as you suggest, and people can infiltrate OT networks and all that kind of stuff. Why haven't we seen, well, big issues there? I mean, yeah, there's the German steel mill thing. Yeah, we saw, stuff like Havax and BE2 infiltrate stuff, but nobody's done anything really big scale and evil. Why? Possibilities include, first, the lack of an effective business model. How do they get paid? How do the bad guys get paid to do that? You say, well, what if they're not cyber criminals? I mean, we're talking nation states. They don't need to get, well, maybe the geopolitics, right? The geopolitics isn't quite right. Nobody wants to bring everything down now because, well, it's not the right time yet. Or maybe it is harder than anticipated. Especially to do this in a careful, controlled, and surgical fashion without cascading impacts that you can't control. Nation states tend to want to have some control over those cascading impacts, although not everyone would. I do believe, though, the battlefield is being prepared. Right now, it is time where the various actors are grabbing land. They're grabbing space in the infrastructures. And we see this. I mean, look up Havax and BE2 and see the systems that they have infiltrated, including power grid networks and water networks inside the US. I think it's a land grab. All right, so the bottom line, over the last 25 years, if you look at what our community has done on the computer security network and data side, it has been really bad. Breaches, constant breaches, rampant information theft, PII, personal health care information, all this stuff. I've given the last 20 years of my life to try to make the world more secure, and I feel kind of like I failed, and my friends failed. We worked really hard. When I started this, I had a full head of hair. You should have seen me. And we, you know, and look at what we've got. Giant breaches everywhere. And denial of service is always a possibility. And now we're putting all this critical infrastructure and our homes on the net and our children's toys. If we don't learn the lessons of the last 25 years and fix this stuff now, things are going to get worse. The internet will grow ever more militarized. Not that I have anything against the military, but it'd be nice if the civilian internet was the civilian internet and didn't require military intervention all over the place. People may get hurt, people may get killed, right? So, now a brief manifesto and a call to action for you. We need to vigorously apply the lessons we've learned by getting our butts kicked on the data and computer side of this over the last 25 years, right? In fact, I was very heartened. I had dinner last night with some of the BSides speakers, and some folks are working, doing really cool stuff because they're learning the lessons of all the things that have gone wrong over the last 25 years. We all need to be doing that. Why are these organizations getting owned? Why are people able to steal 10 or 20 or 50 million credit cards? Or all that information associated with gaining clearance in the OPM hack? Why is that stuff happening, and how can we stop that, but also to embed the lessons learned in our new infrastructure? Defense in depth, segmentation, filtering, strong authentication, careful design that is resilient under attack, and thorough testing. So here's my call to action for you. Please start hacking all the things, right? It's just like Dual Core says, hack all the things, right? I remember in the Dual Core song, you know the song, right? It's a rap song? You're clearly a fan, just maybe not yet. Anyway, in Dual Core's Hack All the Things song, the refrain is, drink all the booze, hack all the things. And I remember when I first heard the song, I thought, well, that's pretty audacious, right? I mean, that's a big agenda. Drink all the booze and hack all the things. Look, we set the booze aside for now because we got all the things to hack. Maybe we'll have that after we finish hacking all the things. We do need to hack all the things. You need to hack the toys. We need to hack the webcams, the baby monitors, the weapon systems. I mean, you guys shouldn't hack them unless you have, of course, approval to do so, right? Yeah. So pick an area to start building your skills here. Maybe it's power grid. You can get industrial control equipment on eBay, like a Siemens PLC, that you could learn about, or medical devices, or water control systems, or home automation. The home automation stuff is cheap, and really, you're going to feel like an awesome hacker when you find your 0 day in it. And there's a pretty good chance you just buy anything at Home Depot that you'll find a 0 day in it. It's that ridiculous and that bad now. And then learn the foundational control protocols by reading the specs. If you're going to go with the power grid side of things, Modbus TCP, that is a really simple protocol. In fact, Josh Wright, a guy on my team, he says calling Modbus a protocol is an insult to actual protocols. Yet it's used all over the place. Or DNP3 or Profinet or the recent, it's a newer protocol, just came out like, I guess it was about 4 months ago now, the Open Spark Grid Protocol, OSGP. And then look for holes, options, bad assumptions. Make some friends, right? I mean, here you are at BSides Augusta. Get to know people, build your community. Also go on a mailing list associated with your given technology choice. Look for a while, who's who, learn the lingo, right? Have some fun with it. Learn the protocols. And don't be intimidated. Listen to me carefully here. You do not need a degree in electrical engineering to do meaningful work in this space. Seriously. And then get hacking. Get real. Procure some instruments. Maybe the manuals first. That can be nice, so you can read up on what it is that you're about to buy before you pay your money. And some of the stuff that we have in CyberCity. We've got a Siemens PLC starter kit, S7-1200. When we first got it, it was about $300. I looked this morning. On eBay, they're like $700 to $800. I liked it when it was $300. Now we're at like $700 to $800. Allen Bradley, L32E compact logic processor, they're getting a little cheaper. And practice. Sniff the protocols you're sending across the network. Inject, maybe with things like Scapy and what have you. And fuzz. There's so much to be found in these. And then hacking the Internet of Things. What should you do there? Buy yourself some stuff, right? You could do this rather inexpensively. $50, $60, get a door lock. Maybe it's $100. Get a door lock, pull off the firmware. Or you don't want to go buy it, get the firmware off the internet. Most of the vendors distribute their firmware on the internet. Download the firmware and open it in a wonderful tool called BinWalk. BinWalk will let you walk through its file system image, finding its code, finding things like, well, all kinds of stuff, perhaps Etsy password, Etsy shadow, all there inside the firmware image. Very helpful. And you say, Ed, I don't want to spend $50 or $100. How about this? You want to go cheaper? $40. Get yourself a Raspberry Pi. How many people in this room have a Raspberry Pi? Raise your hand. Expect a lot. Excellent. Okay, I got another question for you. How many have a Raspberry Pi that is currently in their home and on? Nice, nice. And controlling something in their house? I love you guys. Yeah, awesome. I'm going to ask that same question next year, and hopefully we'll see even more hands go up. This is cool. Get a kid involved. I did this with my own son. We built a thing. My son is 14 years old. We built this 4 months ago. We call it the Morse Codenator. And what it is it's a Raspberry Pi. It's running Linux. And I wrote some Python code on it. Very simple Python. What it does is it uses the Twitter API to pull my Twitter account and see if I posted a new tweet. If I have posted a new tweet, it pulses out to a telegraph key that I have from 1861, and it types out my tweet in Morse code. So it follows my Twitter. I got a little video here I'd like to show you on that. So this is the Morse Codenator. Here I've tweeted. You see what I've tweeted? What hath God? You know what that's? What is that? It's the first message ever sent via telegraph. It's the first message I ever sent to the Morse Codenator. And there it is. That's from 1861. I don't know what side of the Mason-Dixon line that particular device was used on, but I'm sure some of you guys can interpret Morse code just by hearing it. What hath God wrought? Did you hear it? I can't do that. I'm just making that up, right? But still, this was not a hard project. This was 4 hours with me and my son, right? And I encourage you to do that kind of stuff too. I've done some other projects along these lines. I did this one here. What I did here is I got a radio, Atwater Kent Model 10. It's from 1924. And I hooked it up to my computer so that it plays Pandora streaming 1920s music across the internet. I built a GUI for it so it plays through here. This is not that hard to do. Buying old stuff and bringing it back to life. Now this is silly, but it is fun, and it gets you kind of involved in this. So that's what the Atwater Kent Model 10 looks like. And it's connected to my Macintosh, right? So, and it plays that old music. And then there's community involvement, like the cavalry movement. It's still playing the music, you can hear it. The cavalry movement, right? There's some really brilliant people that are working hard to try to make technology inherently safer, right? They've got different working groups on medical devices, automotive. The automotive folks have gotten a lot of attention lately. Home systems and public infrastructure. Reach out and get involved. Okay, let's say you don't want to spend $40 to get yourself a Raspberry Pi. But you still want to learn more about ICS Hacking in Defense, Industrial Control Systems. Do I have anything for you? I do. In December 2013, we wrote a holiday hack challenge where we give you a 140 megabyte packet capture file taken from Cyber City while it was under attack. There's 5 different attacks against 5 different critical infrastructures of Cyber City. 4 of the attacks fail, and you can analyze them and try to figure out why they failed. And 1 of the attacks succeeds and causes a blackout. And you get to analyze why that happened. And that's all free. We call it, It's a Hackerful Life. And we do every year for 11 years so far, this will be our 12th year, we do a holiday hack challenge where we post for free. My team works hundreds of hours on this. In fact, this year, it's probably going to be over 1,000 hours where we work on this thing. And we post it on the internet. Some of you guys have done it. Some of you guys have won it. Wait till you see this year's. It's our best ever. 2015 SANS Holiday Hack Challenge, coming the second week of December. It's going to be part Internet of Things analysis. We're going to take these things and distribute them around planet Earth. And you will have to find them and hack them and take them over. Right? Part Internet scavenger hunt, so you can find them. And part custom wireless and firmware analysis. All built into this little whimsical holiday plot. And and there's some attribution, too. You're going to have to figure out what the bad guy's nefarious plot is and who the bad guy is. That's the ultimate goal in this challenge. You've got to figure out who is the bad guy. So it's fun for the whole family. Please do join us. And in conclusion, we have built a significantly hackable world. I started this discussion by talking about the Model Railroad Club, right? The Tech Model Railroad Club over at MIT. They were building up an infrastructure using model railroad parts to learn and create the hacker community, really. And now, in the Cyber City project, we're using model railroad parts to better understand how hacking happens. We've kind of come full circle. So, as an industry, we've got some really significant work ahead of us. We've got some great people here to do it. Please follow through on the General's recommendations in networking here and talking with each other. And the fact is, while there's a lot of work to do, perhaps we were made hackers for just such a time as this. Awesome. All right? So have a great day here at BSides. I believe our time is up. Is that right? Or do you want to do some questions? Or?
Yes, we're going to get 1 or 2 questions.
Okay.
If you have a question, you have a microphone.
He just wants to use the microphone. That's it. Did you notice the microphones are IP addressable? Okay.
All right. Before there's a question over here.
Yes.
Good. Stand up and yell.
Whatever you'd like. They retract the question. Okay. Oh, we got a question from this enterprising young man. Yep. Yep. I have not, but I've read about it, and I've had my team look at it. So there's a game called HackNet, and it's on Steam and available via the Steam network, and it looks pretty cool. I don't know the veracity of their simulation, though. I'm just not aware of. Somebody I think's got their microphone on, and it's yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate your